Welcome, NEC Hoops fans. It is the NEC On The Run Hoops podcast. My name's Ron Radner. I'm joined by Ryan Peters, our NEC Overtime blog writer. And Ryan, we had a lot to chew on this week. We're 6 weeks deep into NEC play, just 3 to go before the postseason. We had some movement in the standings last week. And for our opening 3-point shot, I know we're going to focus on the 3 teams that came up with sweeps last week.
Yeah, let's start with Stonehill. They now sit in first place with 5 games remaining in their schedule after convincing victories at home against St. Francis University and then on the road against St. Francis Brooklyn. And they held both their opponents to under a point per possession. This defense is now second best in the league in terms of efficiency. I don't think anyone expected Chris Krause's group to be in that kind of position. And you know, they're playing so well. Isaiah Burnett had 10 steals over the weekend in the past 2 games. Zegarowski averaged 15 points a game. Sims 16.5 points per game. They shot an efficient 14 of 33 from deep. They had a positive assist to turnover ratio. Quite simply, Stonehill is just, they're not beating themselves. They're playing really good, sound, efficient basketball, and it's why they're 8-3 right now.
Yeah, let me point out, I was at the Stonehill game on Thursday. I caught the second half of that game. And let me tell you, the crowd is into it. It is a home court advantage at Merrimack Gymnasium. And watching someone, you mentioned Isaiah Burnett, and I just really enjoyed watching him play defense and seeing, we talked to him a couple of weeks ago. How much of an impact does he have in what they've been able to do on defense in the last couple of weeks?
I mean, you don't really have a lot of guys in that team who could hunt steals, but Burnett absolutely could do that. He's had a bunch of pick sixes, and he just changes that team defensively because typically Chris Krause's team, they like to stay in front of you. They like to force tough shots. They have good length 1, 2, and 3 at those positions, and also with the 4 and the 5 as well with Sims and Zegarowski for the most part. But Burnett gives you that opportunity to get that turnover, to get out in that live ball transition opportunity and get easy buckets. Because, you know, in the half court, it's a little bit difficult for Northeast Conference teams to score. So to get those turnovers and get out in transition and score easily is definitely something that Stonehill values.
Yeah, and I think their court spacing is really good with all the shooters they have with Zegarowski and Shamir Johnson and Josh Mack. Sometimes it leaves that open, the middle open for Andrew Sims to do his magic down on the post.
And Burnett to slash, right? To get downhill off the dribble. He's really good at that too. Like you said, the shooters really open up this offense. I alluded to that a lot in the blog post about Stonehill. I'm glad I didn't jinx them, by the way. I wrote it. And they're 2-0 after the post, so take that, take that jinx. But yeah, no, they have the veteran leadership right now. They're set up really well, and it's no surprise after I've seen them over 11 league games why they're in this position.
All right, we have to go to your alma mater now. Sacred Heart, 2-0 week, now back over 500, 6-5, right in the mix. Like the #1 seed is not far out of reach for the Pioneers right now.
Yeah, you got to give them credit because, they look like they were close to dead at 4 and 5. They lost 3 in a row. They've had injuries all throughout the season. But as Anthony Latino would remind anyone, injuries are just an excuse. Like no one cares if you have injuries. And they've found a way to win, knocking off Wagner in Central Connecticut. In my opinion, those were like 2 of the top 4 victories of the season in terms of how well they played. And most impressive is they only had 19 turnovers in the 2 games versus 28 assists. So without McGuire, they've still taken care of the basketball and also punishing their opponents down low. 62% of their 2-point shots were made against Central Connecticut and Wagner. And Nico Gillette, when you need it in the clutch against Wagner, he hits that crazy fadeaway along the baseline to give them to maintain that lead. And then that step back 3-pointer with the shot clock winding down in the final minute of that game. That was the dagger for Sacred Heart. So good, efficient play, but also getting some really good clutch play from their star, Nico Gillette.
Yeah, he's been amazing. He's done that a few times this year. You could see it, he has that look in his eye where I'm taking this ball and I'm shooting this ball and I'm going to make this shot. One other player I wanted to touch on was Bryce Johnson, who has really stepped up in the last couple of weeks. What has he been able to bring to the table for Sacred Heart?
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to get to him as well in the heat check. But yeah, he's just versatile, and he's been, as Anthony Latino calls him, a warrior. He shows up every game. It looked like he hurt his shoulder early in that Central Connecticut game, but he went right back in there, played 30 plus minutes, and he just gives him so much versatility, rebounding, passing, slashing, breaking opponents down off the dribble. He's been invaluable to Sacred Heart.
All right, let's turn our attention to Merrimack. The preseason favorites are on fire right now. Another team I got to catch play in their CBS game against LIU at Lawler Rink. What a place that's, when you're playing there and they have light shows and the production's unbelievable and a giant scoreboard and the place is packed with the band. Another great home court advantage. Merrimack seems to be firing on all cylinders and resembling what we thought they were going to be when the year started.
And I think they needed time for their newcomers to kind of adjust, especially offensively. Defensively, they've been the same team all season. They've been very good, but Merrimack had a brutally difficult non-conference schedule. Even teams that they thought would be games where they could potentially win turned out they're having above average seasons, those teams. So just been a very difficult schedule. Minor was out for all of the month of November, but he's rolling now, 43 points, 21 rebounds, 7 blocks in those 2 wins against LIU and St. Francis University. And then we're going to mention him later, but Ziggy Reed, he's starting to cook now, as he does in February. He's been a great versatile scorer for Joe Gallo. And like I mentioned before, Bennett, Dirk Hack, Stinson, Savage, these guys are starting to play up to their ability level, especially in offense. And that's led to more wins for Merrimack.
Do you think at this point of the year, with all the minutes they're getting, that Bennett and Dirk Hack, they're just not freshmen anymore?
No, absolutely not, because they had to play early in the year. They had to play 25 minutes a game, and yeah, you're right. They actually they kind of exude that kind of veteran presence on the floor, despite the freshman classification.
All right, there it goes. Our 3-point shot. Stonehill, Sacred Heart, and Merrimack all 2-0 last week. Now it's time for our NEC open mic, and we are excited to welcome in NEC Player of the Week, senior Jordan Miner. Jordan, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Jordan, let me get us going here while we have you. Merrimack really starting to roll right now. You've won 4 of 5, 6 and 8, climbing up the standings. Your defensive efficiency has been off the charts, as was expected for your team. What do you think have been the keys to this recent uptick in your success lately?
I think defensively, when we were struggling, defense was still there. I think we were playing great defense there. I think the offense needed a little bit, better scoring and better efficiency for us. And, as of recently, we've been playing better. We've been sharing the ball a lot better. I think that's, what showed, especially in our wins as of late. So I think we've just been passing the ball extremely well, been looking for our guys, trying to get others involved a little bit more. And I think that's been showing. So I think we got to keep doing a little bit more of that. So, but right now we're on a good track. So.
And Jordan, your 4 years have been tremendous, but I'm looking at your assist rate. For a 6'8" center to have an assist rate north of 20% is pretty impressive. Has that always been in your game, the ability to pass and find teammates? Or is that something that you and the Merrimack coaching staff have really worked on, knowing that you're now the focal point of all these defensive scouting reports?
I think I've always had, good touch, especially freshman year. I would have, a couple passes here and there. I think my sophomore year, my junior year was when, me and Phil Gaetano, we actually really kind of honed in on, passing the ball a little bit more, especially now, this year with doubles and stuff, kind of just making the right reads and the right plays and, trying to find my guys and get them open shots. And that just ultimately opens up the floor for me. So I think for me, it's just been about making the right play at the right time, whether that's passing or scoring. So.
Yeah, Phil Gaetano is the right guy. Obviously, Sacred Heart's all-time leading assist maker for sure. I have to ask though, because I was at the Wagner Merrimack game, the game you guys won in Staten Island. You had a couple of dimes that were really pretty, especially in the high post, a couple backdoor cuts. But one in particular, and I'll challenge our producer Kyle to pull this up. You did this to the sideline after you made the assist. Is that is that goggles or those binoculars?
Yeah.
You saw the play from afar. Is that from John Morant? I really need to know. Ron and I do a deep dive in this interview. I really got to know what this is.
Yeah, it's the goggles. It's the goggles when you find an open teammate or you just make an exceptionally nice pass. I think it was either a pass to Ziggy for a dunk. I think that play was, but yeah, I think I was feeling it that game with my pass and finding my teammates. And when you pass the ball and they score, your teammates score, it's kind of gives you that juice, that energy. So it was a good feeling.
Jordan, early in the year, if you look back to November, December, the team struggled a bit, some adversity. You were out for some games, very difficult non-conference schedule. You're trying to integrate some new pieces into your backcourt. How are you able to weather the storm and stay focused on the goal at hand? It probably was not easy.
Yeah, I think for me as a player and then as a program, it wasn't easy at all, especially, with the high expectations that we had coming into the season. But I think a focal point for us was embracing the hard times and embracing the struggle. So, we didn't start off the way we wanted to, kind of went to the drawing board, but we didn't hang our heads down or kind of get discouraged. We just kept trying to figure out what we can do better, what we can do next. So I think for us, it was just embracing, that struggle, those hard times, and knowing that, we are better than what we are going through right now, and we are going to get to where we want to be. So
I mentioned the assist rate, but another maturation of your game is you're now drawing fouls at an incredible level, a career best 6.9 fouls per 40 minutes per Ken Palm. I just have to know, are you sore? Are you bruised up after these games? Like, how are you staying fresh amid all this hard contact? And the fact that you're a center, you're playing 86% of the team's minutes in league play. That is atypical for a center. How are you feeling?
I feel good, especially today. I feel good. We had a light day today, but we take pride here just getting our bodies right, whether it's with the strength staff or the training staff. So ice baths, always staying on top of that. And then, light days when we need them. But I've been feeling pretty good. And, right now I feel exceptionally good for the last month. So gotta string along some games together, despite whether or not I'm feeling good or not. So
Yeah. You gotta be there for your team, right? I just
yeah.
gotta ask, because you've had, that you're the top defensive efficiency in the league, as Ron alluded to earlier. Who's the better defensive player though right now in Coach Gallo's zone, yourself or freshman dynamo Javon Bennett?
Or Vaughn. Yeah. You could toss it up. You're still gonna get, I think a pretty good defensive player. I mean, Vaughn at that top of the key, he's been exceptional for us, especially we talk about it, as a freshman coming in. In high school, you're used to playing man, picking up a zone, especially our zone is kind of hard. So the way he's picked it up quickly has been, extremely phenomenal. And then with me, I think me just keeping that back line intact and keeping everything in front of me. And when things do come my way, be able to play straight up and, get stops. I think that's been really important. But I mean, I got to give it up to Vaughn, especially coming in as a rookie, as a freshman, playing all these minutes. I couldn't see myself doing that as a freshman, so I got to give it up to him. He's been phenomenal as of late.
Yeah, him and Jordan Durkak have really picked up this defense, and also Devon Savage has a nice high steal rate. So credit to Joe Gallo and you, the veteran, and Ziggy Reed as well, kind of getting these freshmen caught up to speed, these newcomers caught up to speed in the zone for sure.
Yeah, I think those all of our newcomers have been exceptionally well. I think I remember Devin Savage had he had a stretch where he was unbelievable shooting the ball, and then Jalen Stinson coming off the bench for us, he really gives us that spark too, being a leader, being vocal. So all four of those guys has been extremely instrumental and phenomenal for our team. So
Hey, Jordan, and Merrimack has had their transition into D1. It's mirrored your career, but the difference this year is you're going to be playing some March basketball. How much more motivation is there for you and your teammates and your coaches, knowing that there's another carrot that's dangling for you guys?
Right. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, coming into the season, I was, telling Ziggy, telling our coaches, wouldn't it be nice to have a game in the Lola rink, with all of our fans coming here for the first time, being in a NEC tournament. So, and, those thoughts are always on the back of my mind. But, right now, I think it's more important trying to get there and trying to position ourselves to, be in the best place we can be, and that's first place. So, we got to take care of business, and then we can start getting all excited about that once we win games in the tournament. So, I mean, I'm excited. I think it'd be great for our program and great for the school. So,
I got one more question for you, Jordan. Let's talk about some non-basketball things. You were our Scholar Athlete of the Year in men's basketball last season, near 3.9 GPA. I know you majored in communications, and we've talked about it in the past, some of your interests and goals. I know you're in grad school now majoring or getting your master's in management. When you're done potentially playing professionally and you hang it all up, what are some of your off-the-court goals moving forward in your career?
One of my off the court goals is starting a podcast. Got to learn from you guys. You guys are one of the best. So starting a podcast is definitely one of my goals. And then, being able to be in that sports kind of business management kind of industry, I think would be something very key and very eye-opening for me. But, for me, I think it's just learning whatever I do. I think just going in there and being a sponge and absorbing as much as I can, I think that would be very beneficial for me in whatever avenue I pick in life. So I'm just excited for, life after basketball, hopefully. So
that's awesome.
Times.
Well, Jordan, it was great talking to you. You are an NEC Elite player and an NEC Elite student as well. And we couldn't be more proud of you and the success you've had at Merrimack. And thanks for taking the time to join Ryan and myself today.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, as always. Always is.
All right, that's our NEC open mic. Ryan, let's get to our heat check. We'll start with Wagner's Brandon Brown, the NEC's leading rebounder.
He's not a high volume scorer by any stretch, but his impact on Donald Copeland's Seahawks this season has been immense. In the Saturday victory against FDU, he had 12 points. It's a modest amount, right? But his and one in the final minute to give Wagner lead, that was ice cold. The drive left, the spin move, and then to finish through Joe Munden's contact for the and one, that was really impressive. And he's been clutch a number of times this year. I think back off the top of my head, NJIT had a big bucket driving to the hole similar to that, like he did against FDU. And he just does whatever you need him to do on the floor. He's an elite rebounder. He's just a guy who will get that. He'll pick up a charge for you on defense. He'll make the extra pass. He'll shoot the open three. He doesn't have to score. He's got no ego, and he's just a perfect guy for Donald Copeland this year.
I love it. I've watched that play 5 times at the end of the game. It is an amazing move. And you're right. He does all the dirty work for Wagner. Let's move on in the heat check to Merrimack and Ziggy Reed.
Yeah, he's averaging 20.5 points in the past two victories, and he was ultra efficient, 14 of 20 from the floor. When he's that efficient, he is difficult to stop. And he's always been a 3-level scorer for Joe Gallo. The problem has been efficiency for him, but he's really starting to play well. He typically does that in February. He's a guy at 6'6", similar to Brandon Brown. He's kind of like a small ball 4-man for them. And in the non-conference, you're playing taller opponents. It's a little bit tougher for him to get a shot off, but NEC competition, he matches up really well, and we're really starting to see that now. And he's also been a really good weapon for Joe Gallo late in the shot clock. He's posting a 60% effective field goal percentage in those situations, and he's also good out of timeouts as well. So certainly another key weapon for Merrimack.
Let's also shout out to Ziggy for scoring his 1,000th point. He joins Jordan Miner on that list. Both of them have done it exclusively now at the Division I level. So great job for Ziggy. And let's move on our heat check too. We've already talked to him about him a little bit, but Bryce Johnson in Sacred Heart has really been a bright spot.
Yeah, amid the injuries, without him, Nico Glett, and Joey Riley, this team would be nowhere right now. But Johnson's as versatile as they come. He's 4th in the NEC in rebounding. He's also efficient, 4th in field goal percentage, has a positive assist to turnover ratio, which is not easy to do if you're a 4 or 5 man in the NEC. Dynamic in transition. I mentioned Latina loves him. I mean, Ron, what do you like most about his game? He does a little of everything.
I like that he's tough. I like that he's athletic. I like that he can handle the ball a little bit. He's kind of like a little Brandon Brown too. Like he'll do whatever you need him to do to win a ball game.
Johnson, gives Sacred Heart an advantage because he'll get the defensive rebound, which he's very good at, and then he'll just get the transition going on his own. You don't even need him to get going, and that's actually been a real asset with McGuire out because typically you want to outlet to him, but Johnson will just get going downhill, and he's tough to stop once he's going, but he has the ability. He's got Draymond Green-like tendencies where he could find the open shooter or he could break his opponent down off the dribble, and so it's been an advantage for Sacred Heart to get out and transition after Bryce Johnson defensive rebound.
And while we're at it here, while not a heat check per se, let's also shout out a few players that had some big milestones this week, along with Ziggy Reed scoring his 1,000th. FDU's Dimitri Roberts scored his 2,000th career point, and that takes into account his time at St. Thomas Aquinas. 2,000 points is amazing. I don't care where you scored them from. He's been an unbelievable addition this year for FDU. Also, Max Zagorowski from Stonehill scored his 1,000th point. He also played a good portion of his career at Franklin Pierce. And then Raheem Solomon on Sacred Heart, and he's got to 1,000 between Sacred Heart and Niagara. So congrats to all 4 of those players for reaching some pretty impressive milestones. As we move into our stat chat, we're going to talk about a team that has been creating some scoring opportunities for themselves.
Yeah, one thing that's really important for Tobin Anderson is winning the turnover margin on a game in, game out basis. And Fairleigh Dickinson is certainly doing that this year in league play. Their offensive turnover rate is first in the league at 16%. They're only committing a turnover on 16% of their possessions, but on defense, they're getting a turnover on 22.6% of their opponent's possessions. That's the widest percentage range in the league. And it's been really impressive. And it's no surprise when Grant Singleton leads all NEC individuals in assist to turnover ratio and Dimitri Roberts is third. You know, that team just does a really good job taking care of the ball. They play fast. It really doesn't matter because they're always in control. They have the best offensive efficiency in the league play by a mile, and turnover margin is one big reason for that.
Yeah, I think it's a big momentum swinger for them. When you see Grant Singleton will hit a 3, and then it'll be a turnover into a layup, and then a steal into a 3. And you get these quick 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 runs, and suddenly they've reversed the momentum of the game, or they've padded their lead.
Yeah, and something Anderson talked to me in the offseason, he loves those 6-0 runs. They're always striving to do that, is get 3 defensive stops in a row and then score on 2 or 3 of those possessions where they get the stops from. And then before you know it, you're up, you're up 6, you're up 8, you're up double figures, and then it just kind of snowballs for the opponent.
For our games to watch this week, we're going to talk about a pair of TV games and then one of the biggest games on this year's regular season schedule. Let's start on Thursday. For our ESPN U game, Sacred Heart playing at St. Francis U. These are 2 teams right in the middle of the pack, looking to get closer and closer to clinching that quarterfinal round home game.
Yeah, Thursday's result is going to have big time implications on who can earn at least one home game in the NEC tournament. If you lose this game, you're really falling behind the 8 ball and almost have to run the table to get a top 3 or 4 seed in the league tournament, I think. And DeGaulle Arena has been a house of horrors for Anthony Latina. He's never won a game there, 0-9 in his career. He's lost a couple of heartbreakers, but Sacred Heart kind of needs to shake off the Frankie the Friar curse, if you will, to get this road win. And even more daunting is the Red Flash are 4-0 in league play at home this year. So it'll be interesting. The last matchup between these 2 is a real defensive battle or offensive struggle, whatever you want to call it. But if Krimel's team wants to break out of their funk, they really need others other than Josh Cohen to score.
Our second TV game this week is on Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Connecticut against FDU. FDU looking this week to potentially move back into first place. Central looking to move up the ladder.
Anytime the Knights are involved, Ron, this year, it's a fun contest. It's going to be made for TV for sure. But I love the backcourt matchup or the perimeter matchup, have you will. Singleton, Roberts square off against Scantlebury and perimeter wing Kellen Amos. And I've been saying it before, Central Connecticut is a better team than what their record indicates. You kind of look at league play, they sit at 4-7, but they're 4th overall in offensive efficiency and 5th overall in defensive efficiency. So you figure they'd be a win or 2 better than their current league record. They just have to be more consistent, kind of closing out games. That's been the bugaboo for Pat Sellers' group.
I'll tell you this, if the season had ended today, I don't want to play Central. I don't want to play St. Francis, Brooklyn, if in a quarterfinal game. I mean, the talent is there on both teams. Glenn Brake has done an amazing job with this group this year, considering the injuries. And I think Central has the potential to beat anybody.
I honestly believe, Ron, that there are potentially 2 or 3 quarterfinal upsets that we could see, road upsets where the road team wins and kind of shakes up the seeding and when they reseed in the semifinals. It's going to be that kind of nightmare because right now you have St. Francis U, as you mentioned, St. Francis, Brooklyn, Central Connecticut as the lower seeds that would have to go somewhere. And no one wants to play those teams.
All right, let's now talk about what I think is one of the marquee games on our schedule. I wouldn't have picked this at the beginning of the year as the marquee game on the schedule, but here we are in February. And Stonehill visiting Merrimack. Stonehill first place 8-3. Merrimack, third place, 7-4, potentially first place on the line in this one. Two NE10 rivals ready to go head to head. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, geographic rivals now too. It's going to be a fun one. I'm most interested in kind of Stonehill's perimeter shooting against that Merrimack defense. As we know, that 2-3 zone really extends out. They try to force players off the 3-point line, but Stonehill's got a number of guys like Zagorowski, Josh Mack, Shamir Johnson. Sims can do a little that, could really shoot it from the outside. So I'm really curious to see what the shot chart's going to be for Stonehill here, kind of diving into the analytics. But it's going to be a fun one. This is important for, the regular season championship potentially. Stonehill's trying to stay on top, and Merrimack is certainly right there as well.
If you can't make it to the games, be sure to watch all your NEC action on necfrontrow.com and the NEC On The Run series of streaming apps. Ryan, that was a jam-packed show today. I want to thank Jordan Miner for taking part in our NEC open mic. And I can't wait till next week's show. I think hopefully we'll have some more clarity here and there. But this is a big week of play. After this, there are only 2 weeks left, and we're at the postseason.
Yeah, you think you have it figured out, but then a week happens like this one where you have 3 sweeps, and then the standings get jumbled. But as you said, a couple of the top teams are kind of jockeying for position now. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more separation, and everything will kind of go into clarity a little bit more, or else you and Craig D'Amico are going to be busy at tiebreakers in a couple weeks.
I can't wait. All right. Thanks, fans, for joining us. As always, we appreciate you, and we will see you next week on the NEC On The Run podcast on the NEC Overtime Pod.